The following is a special production of the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Welcome to Tough Enough, a recap and breakdown show from the MMA Outsiders following every episode of The Ultimate Fighter Season 31, Team McGregor versus Team Chandler. And now, here are your hosts, Tom Albano and Zan Bando.
Oh man, I gotta say, we just watched an absolute classic. With my mic, we just had an absolute classic that just go down in the UFC Apex with that card. Hi everybody, with that fight. Hi everybody. I am sorry. I'm Tom Albano, and I am absolutely tired. I've had a long day. That doesn't stop me from coming on here. I mean, we got a couple more weeks left. We got this week, and then we got the finale, so we might as well just go on with it. Hey, I'm Tom Albano once again, and wow, that's the only thing really that's on my mind right now. Kurt Hollabaugh and Jason Knight deserve all the praise in the freaking world. They absolutely delivered. They left everything, literally everything, in that octagon, vying for one more chance at the UFC. And I got to give my props. It was an absolute war. I know they said Jason Knight, Chandler described him as a war of attrition kind of fighter, and that's what we kind of saw a little bit. I mean, those two threw from the very beginning, and you knew we were in for something the minute you saw Knight and Hollabaugh trading within the first 20, 30 seconds of that fight. It was absolutely incredible. So you got to give them all the praise in the world. And my hope is at the end of all this, they both walk away with UFC contracts. Before we get into anything, just make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here at the Empty the Bench Network. Every stream of Tough Enough, including next week's post show for the final episode of Tough, which is where we'll go over the finale fights. Yes, so we are not, I repeat, not going to do any sort of preview for the fight between Kurt Hollabaugh and Austin Hubbard. We're not going to cover that today. We are going to cover that next week, because next week Zan Bando, my co-host on the MMA Outsiders, will actually be returning. He will return for the last show, and we will talk about those finale fights at that time once the bantamweight final is official for after next week's episode. So just to clarify, we are not going to do a preview for Austin Hubbard versus Kurt Hollabaugh. We're just going to talk about the Hollabaugh Knight fight. We'll preview a little bit of the episode next week. We'll talk about the Coach's Challenge, obviously. So that's the business that we're going to take care of here. Just make sure you hit the like, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell. Obviously, since it's a live stream, we're going out to the MMA Outsiders Facebook and Twitter pages as well as the ETB Network and ETB Sports accounts as well. So if you're watching us on Facebook or the platform, I messed up and said Twitter, I should say X. Please make sure to hit the like button and make sure to give the they call it a repost now, I guess. It's a repost, or which was used to be the retweet, the share, as you would say on Facebook, and all of that. Again, I'm Tom Albano. You can find my work over at Fansided MMA, as well as with the Professional Fighters League throughout the rest of the 2023 season, which will include the 2 playoff cards that will happen in the next couple of weeks here in New York City. So feel free to check my work out there. You can follow me on Twitter right there at Thomas J. Albano. All right. Before we get into anything about the episode, let's have a look at the a comment that Dana White made earlier tonight that kind of got my attention. Actually, hold on, a comment here. Oh, it's from Zan himself. Great fight, but those coaches challenge questions were a joke. I would have gotten most, if not all of those. I did get most of those. As they were going along with it. Yeah, it was a little bit of a joke. It was pretty funny. I do have to say, how the hell did both Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler, how did they both think that Tito Ortiz ever beat Chuck Liddell in the UFC? Tito got finished twice. Pretty convincing fashion twice, if I do say so myself. It was really just a couple of those questions. And that's ultimately what did Chandler in, by the way, was the UFC history questions. The tough questions, that's where the BS kind of, you know what, I'm going on that one. So, you know what, let's just talk about that before I get into the Dana post-fight conference remark. But let's talk about that. So this episode marked the old-time tradition of the TUF Coaches Challenge, in which Conor McGregor ends up coming on top. And the Coaches Challenge was a trivia contest. And in the trivia contest, it was 3 rounds. That's why the graphic's a little bigger. That's why I have it set up like that. It was 3 rounds. The first round was UFC questions. The second round was tough questions. And the third round was questions about one another. And they had to sit in basically ice baths. And it was it was about 39 degrees. They were using some sort of tool. I'm not too familiar with it with ice baths, but basically they were using some sort of tool to basically ensure how cold it was in the tubs for those two. And Chandler admits that basically he always used to hate cold water. He used to hate the ice baths, and the trivia kind of screwed him up. And you could see that first round, basically Chandler get all sort of screwed up, whether the ice and the coolness of the water had anything to do with it or not. I'm not 100% certain. I would assume it definitely did, but I can't say for certain. But yeah, that's where it seemed like it was a little weak. Even Chandler admitted afterwards, by the way, that, all the UFC knowledge, he used to watch the fights, but they were always in the back of his mind. He couldn't bring it out into the front, which Conor didn't do too much better, but that round was still basically what helped move things along. I was just so mad that they didn't show the whole thing. I wish I hope we get an uncut version with all of the questions, because I would want to see those questions about TUF, because I would want to test myself. I ended up getting most of the questions right, not all of them, just most of the questions right with the trivia that they did show. And ultimately, I think the questions that were the most of a joke were the questions about each other. Conor McGregor, which round did he get submitted by Khabib in? The newcomers question would have been good, except it was 2003, 2013, and 2023. That being the answers that were answer choices that were given out to Chandler. So it was just that third round was a little bit of a joke. I thought the last question that they asked was pretty good, but I don't know. It just smelled a little set up in that way to be easy. It just I want to see the whole thing, and just I guess I would have formatted it a little differently. But you know what? It was still fun. Still a highlight of the season. Congratulations to Conor, which, by the way, Bruce Buffer with the line of the season: "The rich get richer." Of course they did. So of course it takes somebody jumping ship from Team Chandler to Team McGregor and a coach's challenge for Conor McGregor to start to rack up wins during this tough season. All right. Nevertheless, let's get to what I originally wanted to start off with, which was comments that Dana White made at the post-fight press conference. With the it took place after the Dana White Contender Series cards. So next week we're gonna have to deal with the Dana White Contender Series card as well beforehand. But then DWCS will move to its normal 8 p.m. start time, and that's in week 3. Hold on, let me bring up I want to see if I can play it for everybody. The full comment that was made about Conor fighting Chandler from the press conference. Let's see if I can get my phone to work. Okay.
I talked to Conor, it was either yesterday or the day before. And, yeah, he's ready to fight. I said, listen, get in shape and let's figure this out.
Still definitely Chandler?
Yeah, he's fighting Chandler. Conor likes to fuck with everybody, you know what I mean?
All right. So basically, basically for those who need the fuller context, apparently Conor has been making the rounds on the social media apps, specifically one X. No, I didn't say one X because it's the 3 Days Grace album, which I absolutely love. No, he's referring to X. I'm referring to X about the social media platform because Conor McGregor over the last couple of nights has basically gone off the deep end. Basically looking at Jake Paul after his win over Nate Diaz and referring to him with some very unflattering terms, which I will not repeat over the airwaves. And basically saying F Chandler, and it seemed like the fight with Chandler was once again off. However, and that was the original plan that I was going to come here with tonight, and basically go on a whole tirade about Conor not fighting Chandler. However, he says, Dana White says that McGregor Chandler is going to happen. I repeat, is going to happen. Now, taking his word for it, I'm not 100% certain if it ever will happen. And who's to say, I mean, if it's even going to happen in December? It may at this rate happen in January or February. I mean, nothing else I can really say except what Chandler and Gaethje have all been saying. I wouldn't be surprised if Poirier, his old rival, throws something in there. Piss in the cup. Enter the USADA pool again, Conor. I'm saying for certain, I've got a feeling that the UFC has to be working on some sort of USADA exemption for Conor, so that way the fight can happen in December 16th. I mean, otherwise, at this point, the December 16th card might as well be Yuri Prohaska versus Alex Pereira for the vacant light heavyweight title. I don't know what other fight that they could book as the main event at that point, knowing which champions are booked and the structure of the remaining UFC pay-per-view cards for the rest of, from August through December for the rest of 2023. Nevertheless, that's basically McGregor Chandler, Dana White is assuring is going to happen. So here's hoping. All right. Let's talk about this fight. It was freaking awesome. I don't know. I don't know what else you want me to say except it was absolutely insane. It was freaking awesome. And I gotta give all the credit in the world. I gotta give all the credit in the world to those two guys. I mean, as I said during the intro, you could tell when the first 20 to 30 seconds that these two were really trying to lay it in. They were really trying to lay it in on each other. So, I mean, I gotta give all the credit in the world to them. They were absolutely bonkers. They said they lived up to their word. They both said we're going to go in there and we're going to lay everything out. And Chandler referred to as one of the most even matchups in the TUF could possibly have. Hold on one sec, guys. I have something I got to take care of on my phone right now. Okay. But yeah, these two just absolutely delivered in more ways than one. They lived up to their promises of that these two were going to just lay it all in there, that it wasn't going to be an even battle, and these two were just going to strike each other to hell, basically. And that's what basically played out. And these two basically just threw in the pocket. They fired off every single shot they could. I liked Chandler's analysis of earlier in the episode where he was saying that basically Jason Knight is attrition and Kurt Hallball is all power. And Kurt Hallball definitely laid some pretty good shots in. His boxing was pretty much on point. Both of the guys, both their faces were pretty busted up. Although Knight's maybe was a little more worse for wear. Although Hallball, his nose was definitely a little tarnished. I gotta also give credit, by the way, to the prayer that the two did, because throughout the episode, they were telling about each other's history, the fact that these two were supposed to fight about 10 years ago, and that fight never actually managed to come to fruition. Then they were excited to fight one another. They had been teammates. They both won their fights as part of Team Chandler, part of the veteran team, and both, had some unsuccessful runs in the UFC looking to get back. They showed all the respect in the world to one another. They said a prayer together on the weigh-in stage. Absolutely warmed my heart. So, I mean, I don't know what else I can say except this fight was bleeping awesome. And like I said during the intro, I think that Holloway and Knight both need to get awarded tough contract. I mean, the UFC contracts for their performances on Tough. I really think they do. They both deserve another chance. And Holloway, I mean, I got to give a shout out to him. He was such a nice guy when I got to interview him a couple of years ago, and it's so good to see him now back here getting the opportunity to fight in the Tough finale on a UFC pay-per-view card, because he's going to be the finale fights are going to be on the prelims of UFC 292, and he's going to be taking on Austin Hubbard, who is a hell of a talent and somebody I pegged very early on as potential to win the lightweight portion of the tournament. So I think Austin Hubbard's going to be a bit more of a challenge for Holloway, but I still think Holloway has a shot. But we'll get more into that next week. Of course, next week is the finale. One more fight to go. We got Rico DeSulo from Team McGregor taking on Cody Gibson with Team Chandler. The winner will face Brad Katona, who went from Team Chandler to Team McGregor, got the win in his semifinal fight. The winner will face Katona in bantamweight final, also at that UFC 292 card on the prelims. And I kind of want to say Cody Gibson as my pick. I definitely think Cody Gibson is the more talented fighter. The question is, he's coming off of that injury, the partially torn, I think it was MCL. I think it was an MCL that they mentioned earlier in the season that he had injured. And basically, it could be hanging by a thread. So I really want to know if that's going to affect his mobility and his flexibility, what he can do, because he's going to have to protect that in the fight. And I feel like Rico DeSulo might try to manipulate that and put that fight in his favor. That's what I think ultimately this fight comes down to, is Cody Gibson's injury. I want to see the progress that he's made over the time. So we'll talk about that next week. And regardless, again, as I mentioned in the previous week, whoever wins this fight, I still think is losing to Brad Katona in the finale. Brad Katona just has everything going for him. He won his fight as part of Team Chandler. He won his fight as part of Team McGregor. So I feel like Brad Katona, and he was one of the more talented people, one of the more talented vets of the 8 vets that participated in this season. I had pegged Katona early on as potential bantamweight winner. Could be the first person to win Tough twice, and I think that happens this next week. But next week is next week. It's the last week of The Ultimate Fighter Season 31, and it's the last week of Tough Enough, The Ultimate Fighter Aftermath, your limited series as part of the MMA Outsiders. So I want to thank you all for tuning in. Again, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here at the Empty the Bench Network. Next week's finale, the next edition of the MMA Outsiders, which come out on Thursday morning with myself and Zambando. Empty the Bench, Fruity Cereal, so much more. Again, because this was a live stream, it goes out, of course, to our MMA Outsiders and social media pages, as well as the social media pages of the ETB Network and ETB Sports. So make sure to like those pages. Make sure to repost and share the episode. Follow everything with the social media pages. I'm Tom Albano. You can find my work over at Fansided MMA and with the PFL for the rest of their 2023 season. You can follow me on X at Thomas J. Albano. All right. That is going to do it for this edition of Tough Enough. Hopefully you tune in with us for the finale. We'll, of course, live X. Is it live X now instead of live tweet? Yeah, I guess so. So live X are the Tough 31 last episode, and be with us for our Tough Enough finales. And will rejoin me next week for the last episode. So stay tuned for that. Until then, I'm Tom Albano. Catch you next time. Take care, everybody.